and infrastructure. At this time, can everybody please silence your cell phones? If you wish to testify, please go outside of the room to fill out a testimony slip. At this time and going forward, no one is to approach the dais. I repeat, no one is to approach the dais. Chair, we are ready to begin. Check, 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 check.
Good morning, and thank you for joining today's hearing of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. My name is Sylvina Brooks Powers, and I am the chair of this committee. Today's oversight topic is maintaining, greening, and enhancing the city's sidewalks, median, and streetscapes. In addition, the committee will hear the following legislation. Intro number 169, sponsored by Majority Leader Amanda Farias, in relation to the installation of electric vehicle charging equipment on lampposts. Intro number 221, sponsored by Councilmember Robert Holden, in relation to requiring the Parks Department to repair damage caused by trees owned by the City of New York. Intro number 262, sponsored by Councilmember Rita Joseph, in relation to requiring the installation of speed bumps on roadways adjacent to any park equal or greater than 1 acre. Intro number 270, also sponsored by Councilmember Rita Joseph, in relation to special activation of the Open Streets program on certain holidays and time periods with significant pedestrian traffic. Intro number 882, sponsored by Councilmember Robert Holden, in relation to the installation and maintenance of tree guards. Intro number 1104, sponsored by myself, in relation to a study and report on the feasibility of new ferry terminals. Intro number 1147, also sponsored by myself, in relation to requiring the cleaning of medians at least once per quarter. Intro number 1154, sponsored by Councilmember Julie Menon, in relation to establishing a high visibility pavement, marking pilot program, and the repeal of this local law upon the expiration thereof. And intro number 1233, sponsored by Councilmember Eric Botcher, in relation to the planting of vegetation on new medians separating bicycle lanes from motorized vehicle traffic. The over 12,000 miles of sidewalks managed by DOT across the 5 boroughs are not just pathways, but essential parts of our transportation system. Although public sidewalks are owned by the city, property owners are responsible for their maintenance, including clearing snow, ice, and debris. Under the administrative code, property owners can be held liable if they fail to keep their sidewalks safe. The city replaces more than 2 million square feet of sidewalk every year. However, much of this work depends on local accountability and enforcement through DOT's Sidewalk in Violation program. When sidewalks are in good repair, this means a better city for all New Yorkers. Medians are also critical parts of our infrastructure, with pedestrian fatalities accounting for nearly 1/5 of all crash deaths. Medians give people safe places to pause when crossing busy streets. DOT and the U.S. Department of Transportation both encourage the installation of medians for traffic calming, stormwater management, and neighborhood beautification. But when medians are not properly cleaned or maintained, they can become eyesores, overgrown with weeds, filled with trash, or clogged with stormwater runoff. That is why the legislation before us today seeks to establish clear requirements for regular cleaning and greening to ensure that medians are a benefit to neighborhoods, not a burden. Our streets and roadways are the backbone of our transportation system. DOT manages thousands of miles of roads and oversees resurfacing and reconstruction projects to repair potholes, cracks, and stormwater issues. These capital projects are costly and lengthy, often taking several years, but are critical to building a safer, stronger, and more resilient streets for the next generation. Today's hearing is about all of these elements: sidewalks, medians, and streets, and how together they shape the quality of life in New York City. When sidewalks are well maintained, medians are clean and green, and streets are safely designed, the result is a city that is more accessible, sustainable, and safe for every resident. Before we begin, I would like to thank Renee Taylor, my Chief of Staff, Julian Martin, my Legislative and Budget Director, as well as Mark Chen, Senior Legislative Counsel, Theodore Miller, Legislative Counsel, Kevin Katowski, Senior Policy Analyst, John Basile, Senior Policy Analyst, Saimul Hamid, Financial Analyst, Elizabeth Childers Garcia, Financial Analyst, and Faria Rahman, Financial Analyst, for their hard work in preparing for today's hearing. I now ask Committee Counsel to swear in the administration. Apologies for that. We'll have an opening statement from Majority Leader Farias.
Thank you so much, and good morning, Chair Brooks Powers and colleagues that are present. Thank you for convening today's hearing. I'm proud to be here to present my bill, Intro 169, which would direct the Department of Transportation to annually evaluate and install electric vehicle charging infrastructure equipment in our city's lampposts where feasible. I also want to thank my council member colleagues, Hanif, Hudson, Brewer, Gennaro, Ressler, and Riley for joining me in sponsoring this important piece of legislation. We all know that New York City has ambitious goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and electrify our vehicle fleet. But the truth is, we will not get there without building out the infrastructure that makes it possible. Lamppost charging offers a low-cost, high-impact solution. It takes advantage of our existing streetscape, reduces the need for expensive standalone charging stations, and makes EV adoption more accessible for working-class New Yorkers who may not have had a garage or private driveway. This bill is about asking the administration to think more innovatively about how we use our city's assets. We should not limit ourselves to the status quo, but rather look for smart, efficient ways to prepare New York City for a cleaner electric future. By embedding charging into our everyday infrastructure, we position ourselves as a leader in sustainable urban planning. I urge the administration to strongly consider how embracing these kinds of innovative approaches to help meet our climate goals, reduce pollution in communities like mine in the Bronx, and ensure that the transition to electric vehicles is equitable and accessible for all New Yorkers. While we are looking to our pilots, adapting our infrastructure is the future, and it will determine whether or not the city can achieve success in its transition. Thank you again to Chair Brooks Powers for the opportunity to speak on my bill today and for your commitment to advancing forward-thinking transportation solutions. I look forward to your testimony from the administration and the discussion ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Next, I will read into the record testimony on behalf of Councilmember Rita Joseph. Good morning, Chair Brooks Powers and other colleagues of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. Thank you for holding this hearing and for giving me the opportunity to speak on my bills, Intro 262 and Intro 270. Intro 262 is a local law to amend the Administrative Code of the City of New York, requiring the installation of speed humps on roadways adjacent to parks that are 1 acre or larger. This bill would require the Department of Transportation to install speed humps along these roadways unless the DOT Commissioner determines that doing so would pose a risk to pedestrians or drivers, or would go against DOT's established guidelines. Intro 270 is a local law to amend the Administrative Code of the City of New York to allow special activations of the Open Streets program on specific holidays and during times of high pedestrian traffic. This bill would require the DOT to provide Open Streets participants with the opportunity to expand their operating hours on certain holidays, including Memorial Day, Juneteenth, and the 4th of July, Labor Day, Halloween, and other high traffic days. It would also require the DOT to accept suggestions from community organizations to add other holidays for special activation. Applications for these special activations would follow the same review process as regular open streets applications. Since my first year in office in 2022, many residents have reached out with concerns about traffic safety. We have worked with the DOT to address these issues, but the process is often slow and sometimes unresolved. These bills reflect our commitment to the people of Council District 40 and to all New Yorkers. We want DOT to support communities in celebrating cultural holidays safely by making it easier to request and receive open street approvals, speed up the installation of speed humps in areas where residents have long requested them. Residents are tired of speeding drivers putting their loved ones at risk. They deserve safer streets. Passing these pieces of legislation would be our way of saying to our residents and New Yorkers that we have listened to them and are doing everything possible to assist them on their requests. Thank you again to the committee for holding this hearing and allowing me to speak. I also want to thank all the staff members who helped bring these bills to this point, my staff members and central staff. I look forward to hearing testimony from both the administration and our community members. Thank you. Also, we've been joined by Majority Leader Farias, Councilmember Lewis, and Councilmember Banks. And I believe online we have Councilmember Narcisse. With that, strike from the record, Councilmember Narcisse. With that, Committee Counsel, if you could swear in the administration.
Thank you. Our first panel will be from the Department of Transportation, Margaret Forgione, First Deputy Commissioner, Paul Choa, Executive Deputy Commissioner, Montgomery Dean, Director of Operations, and Ricardo Rodriguez, Assistant Commissioner of Intergovernmental and Community Affairs. And from the Department of Parks and Recreation, Benjamin Osborne, Assistant Commissioner, and Matt Drury, Director of Government Relations. And from the Economic Development Corporation, Franny Civitano, Senior Vice President of NYC Ferry. And from the Department of Small Business Services, Jason Adelaide, Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. I will now administer the oath. Please raise your right hands. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions?
I do.
Thank you. You may begin when ready.
Good morning, Chair Brooks Powers and members of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure. I am First Deputy Commissioner Margaret Forgione. I am joined by Paula Choa, Executive Deputy Commissioner, Montgomery Dean, Director of Operations, and Rick Rodriguez, Assistant Commissioner for Intergovernmental and Community Affairs. We are also joined by colleagues from the Parks Department, Matt Drury, Chief of Citywide Legislative Affairs, and Ben Osborne, Assistant Commissioner of Forestry and Horticulture. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of Mayor Adams and Commissioner Rodriguez about the administration's work to enhance New York City's sidewalks, medians, and streetscapes. DOT is responsible for operating and maintaining 6,300 miles of streets and highways and over 12,000 miles of sidewalk. Everyone in New York interacts with the roadways and sidewalks to get around, and the vast majority of our goods travel to their final destinations on our streets. Our goal, as always, is to make sure that in a safe, efficient, and environmentally responsible way for all street users, increasing accessibility, improving pedestrian and cyclist connectivity, and keeping the roadwork in a state of good repair. To that end, DOT continues to work hard and creatively to deliver high-quality, high-impact projects that enhance streetscapes through safety and maintenance improvements, with our interventions proving successful. The first 6 months of 2025 had the second lowest traffic fatalities since 2018, with fatalities down 30% from last year. The decline follows the administration installing a record amount of pedestrian space, a record number of protected bike lanes, and completing major street redesigns across the city, treatments shown to enhance the city's sidewalks, medians, and streetscapes. Turning to the legislation before the council today. First, Intro 169, sponsored by Councilmember Farias. This bill would require DOT to install electric vehicle charging equipment on lampposts based on an annual feasibility determination. Shifting to more sustainable modes of transportation is an integral part of the administration's efforts to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. The most sustainable way to get around is by walking, biking, or transit. But for those New Yorkers who choose or need to drive, we want them to drive electric. To support EV adoption, the agency continues to develop a comprehensive EV charging network with an emphasis on expanding charger access in areas where private sector investment is limited and supporting the electrification of the yellow taxi and FHV fleets. As part of this strategy, we have been expanding access to fast charging across the city, turning our parking lots and garages into EV charging hubs and installing level 2 curbside chargers. In June 2021, DOT partnered with Con Edison to launch the city's first curbside EV charging pilot program, which includes 100 public on-street level 2 chargers distributed across 35 locations in the 5 boroughs. These chargers, installed and operated by Con Edison, are consistent with the look of existing street furniture and have 2 chargeables and retractable cables to avoid obstructing the sidewalk. The current system has an average utilization of 70% across all sites, the highest utilization rate of any such system, with some locations reaching over 90%. The program's performance exceeded expectations and demonstrated that curbside level 2 charging can meet existing charging needs, is operationally feasible, and can increase charging across equity. Based on the success of the pilot, the agency plans to expand this program to over 600 plugs across 5 boroughs using federal funding. As part of this expansion, we are seeking to deploy chargers that are compact, are consistent with the look and feel of our family of street furniture, and are easy to install and remove so as to maintain flexibility in the use of the curb. In 2022 and 2023, the agency tested a number of different charger designs, including a streetlight mounted unit and a unit where the user supplies the charging cord. This research, as well as ongoing monitoring of advances in the charger space, are informing our design approach to expansion. DOT supports the intent of this bill to expand access to charging at the curb. Based on our research and testing, however, streetlight mounted chargers do present certain engineering and utility-related challenges as compared to freestanding units. We look forward to discussions with the Council and appropriate stakeholders on the legislation and the best strategies to expand access to curbside charging. Next, Intro 221, sponsored by Councilmember Holden, regards the repair of sidewalk damage caused by city-owned trees. The city utilizes various approaches to address damage caused by city-owned trees to sidewalks adjacent to 1, 2, and 3 family residential properties. As a matter of policy, since 2019, DOT no longer issues sidewalk violations to owners of these properties for defects caused exclusively by city trees. The city will repair tree-related damage to the sidewalk if non-tree-related defects exist, but will not charge property owners of these properties for the damage caused by city trees. New York City Parks also offers the Trees and Sidewalks program, which repairs sidewalks adjacent to 1, 2, and 3 family homes that have been damaged by the roots of city trees. Repairs are made based on a rating system that includes the severity of damage, amount of pedestrian traffic, and size and condition of the tree. The Law Department has indicated concerns over the potential of the bill, as drafted, to create confusion in its effort to redefine the balance of liabilities and responsibilities between the city and homeowners. Agencies currently have mechanisms for addressing the damage caused by tree roots at no cost to homeowners. We look forward to further discussions with the agency's Law Department and Council to appropriately achieve the goals of this bill. Next, Intro 262, sponsored by Councilmember Joseph. This bill will require the installation of speed humps on roadways adjacent to any park equal or greater than 1 acre, which equates to nearly 5,000 roadway segments. DOT works to enhance safety through a variety of traffic calming design interventions that make streets safer by encouraging slower speeds, and raised speed reducers are just one example of a wide variety of treatments we use as part of our traffic calming design guidelines. Speed humps are one of the 2 types of raised speed reducers, the other being speed cushions. Speed humps span the width of the street and are typically raised to 4 inches above the level of the roadway and have a proven track record in the city. We are proud of our program to install and maintain these around the city, having completed 323 new speed reducers in 2024 and 490 reinstallations. That said, we strongly believe that mandating a specific treatment in specific locations is inadvisable, as the agency utilizes a data-driven approach as well as engineering judgment to target locations most in need of safety interventions. Our data-driven approach and engineering judgment supports the installation of not only speed reducers, but also road diets, bike lanes, curb extensions, pedestrian refuge islands, and signal timing changes. Limiting our toolkit to only speed reducers along all roadways adjacent to these parks leads to a treatment either unsuitable in some locations, and perhaps more importantly, to a less safe, less data-driven approach in addressing the most dangerous locations citywide. We support the overall goal of providing safety around parks and other busy parts of the city, and welcome any suggested locations to explore additional safety improvements. Next, Intro 270, sponsored by Councilmember Joseph. This bill would modify the Open Streets program to offer special activations on certain holidays and time periods with significant pedestrian traffic. Our Open Streets program is a beloved activation, transforming our streets into public space open to all. In 2025, we will feature more than 200 locations citywide, which includes a record high 72 open streets at schools across the city as part of the back-to-school season, and celebrated annual traditions through Car-Free Earth Day and an expanded version of summer streets reaching over 400 blocks. We support this bill as we already extend the opportunity for programming on holidays, like our annual Trick or Streets activations, and we look forward to supporting potential programming partners to activate our streets on even more days. Next, Intro 882, sponsored by Councilmember Holden. This bill would grant DOT the authority to install and maintain tree guards on city property. The Department of Parks and Recreation has jurisdiction over street trees, including a comprehensive tree guard installation process to get tree guards installed in front of residential buildings and businesses. While we appreciate the Council's focus on the beautification of our sidewalks, considering the Parks Department already has both charter-mandated jurisdiction over street tree maintenance and the expertise on tree maintenance and tree guards, we are concerned with shifting the authority of tree guard installation from the Parks Department to DOT. Next, Intro 1104, sponsored by Chair Brooks Powers. This bill would require DOT, in consultation with Small Business Services and Economic Development Corporation, to study and report on the feasibility of siting additional ferry terminals in New York City. Although DOT owns and operates the Staten Island Ferry, EDC oversees the city's private ferry operators and the promotion of the use of our waterways for transportation. As stated in the hearing before this committee on September 10th, 2024, we would recommend any ferry feasibility studies to reflect the current nature of how expansion is being done, that it's being led through the ferry team at EDC. As we do not oversee or operate the NYC ferry contract, we believe that EDC should be the lead on any such study, with DOT providing any needed help or expertise. Respectfully, we defer to their expertise. Next, Intro 1147, sponsored by Chair Brooks Powers. This bill would require the cleaning of medians at least once per quarter. Routine median maintenance is a multi-agency effort across paved and planted medians. DOT's efforts include a variety of services, including regular horticultural care, litter removal, and ad hoc services to address conditions that may arise at specific planted medians that we have capitally constructed. Although we oppose the bill as written, if there are specific areas of concern, we are happy to inspect these locations with our sister agencies and work with you to address any problems. Next, Intro 1154, sponsored by Councilmember Menon. This bill would establish a high-visibility pavement marking program culminating in a report on whether to expand or make the program permanent. DOT already uses marking products that are the most visible, while also being proven to be reasonably durable in active traffic. These are primarily thermoplastic markings with embedded glass beads, which provide reflectivity for visibility at night. We install these markings not only when roads are repaved, but through an active refurbishment program so that our streets remain safe with visible markings. Testing new materials in the active right-of-way is inadvisable and could directly lead to bad safety outcomes if the materials fail to adhere, are slippery, or prove not to be visible at night. When new products enter the market, we test them outside of the public right-of-way first and only bring them into public use if they are visible, durable, safe, cost-effective, and available at the scale of our city. Our recent testing of photoluminescent markings demonstrated that it does not meet this reasonable standard. We do not support the bill as written, but we are happy to have more discussions about our processes and are open to testing new materials in appropriate locations. Next, Intro 1233, sponsored by Councilmember Botcher. This bill would require new medians separating bike lanes from motorized vehicle traffic to accommodate street trees or vegetation planted by the Department of Parks and Recreation. Vegetation within the right-of-way has been shown to provide significant benefits, enhancing pedestrian safety and beautifying the streetscape. As part of our capital and in-house street improvement project work, we already ensure that, as long as newly constructed medians meet the requirements of the Parks Department and have a long-term maintenance plan, vegetation is planted. We support this bill and look forward to continuing the ongoing work of enhancing our streetscapes with vegetation. In conclusion, I would like to thank the Council for the opportunity to testify before you today. We would now be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that, Commissioner. Also, I'd like to acknowledge that we have now been joined by Councilmember Narcisse online. I am going to yield to my colleagues and then go into my questions today. Try something different. We'll start with Majority Leader Farias, followed by Councilmember Banks.
Amazing. Thank you, Chair. Just some comments and thoughts on the testimony. I appreciate being open to the dialogue around the bill. I hear you on some of the maybe infrastructure challenges from the studies that were conducted or the research that was conducted. What came up for the assets we have on city property and why they're not usable?
Okay, Councilmember, are you referring specifically to the pilot that we did with the streetlights?
Yeah, I mean, you have here, based on our testing and research, streetlight mounted chargers do present certain engineering and utility-related challenges as compared to freestanding units. I guess my initial thought was, is this the electrical grid? What's the capacity issue that's there?
Good, I'll just start and then I'll hand it over to Monty Dean to elaborate a little bit. So we did a pilot several years ago using several streetlights to test the technology. And it does present issues in terms of streetlights not having enough power from the grid to be able to accommodate the EV charging without interventions by Con Ed. We also have some issues regarding how that the amount of energy is captured and then paid back to Con Ed, as well as some technical things about how the streetlights can hold the structures. So Monty will explain.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. Yeah, so to add to that, so structurally, some of our streetlight poles, we would need to make sure that they could actually hold the weight of whatever facilities we're putting on there for the chargers. So in many cases, we think we would have to actually rebuild the foundation and the pole itself in order to accommodate charging infrastructure. And then, as Commissioner Forgione said, there's not enough power in the streetlights because it's just enough to power the light itself. So it would require additional service from Con Ed. The way we currently pay Con Ed for our street lighting is that we have what they call a tariff, where it's a general rate for all of our streetlights. Whereas for something like this, we'd have to set up a separate metered service to cover this this service.
Have you folks spoken to other cities to see how they're doing this? Because there's several other cities that use this type of infrastructure.
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, that's in part one of the challenges. So, for example, where this is really successful is California and Los Angeles in particular. In that example, the city runs its own municipal electricity companies.
Interesting. Maybe we have to have a municipally run electrical grid. I don't know. The other question I have here, in your testimony, you stated that the pilot, the agency plans to expand the pilot program to over 600 plugs across the 5 boroughs using federal funding. What's the amount of federal funding we're expected to receive, or that we've already received? That's, I guess, a 2-part question.
I can take it, Councilmember. Good to see you. I believe it's $13 million in CFI funding. We have obligated, we won the award. Yeah, 30. That's the entire amount. Yeah. It's $13 million of competitive grants. We have not done the final step of finalizing the grant agreement. As soon as that happens, we'll of course let you know. If for some reason the federal funding falls through, we'll be talking to our folks at City Hall and OMB to make sure that we have the appropriate funding to continue the pilot.
Yeah, I mean, I worry about that only because we have a president that was literally at the UN saying climate change isn't real, and so and is really looking at so many different avenues of not moving us towards electrification across the nation. So please keep us posted on that grant agreement, and I would probably say sign it today if you can.
We're ready to sign it.
Oh, okay.
It needs 2 signatures. One of them is ready.
Okay, great.
And maybe, Councilmember, just to quickly summarize what we currently have for EV charging might be helpful. So we have the 600 that will be installed over the next 3 years, but currently we have 100 ports already on street. Those are level 2 chargers. And then off street, mainly in our parking garages, we have 71 level 2, but then 11 level 3 chargers. And then between DCAS and DOT, we also have 300 additional charging ports spread out throughout the city on city sites.
Okay. And is there a roadmap for expanding beyond the pilot projects into a scalable citywide EV charging strategy?
Yes, we're continuing to look at every funding opportunity, as we just mentioned, and then continue to learn as we expand and keep going with them, absolutely.
And in this plan, how is the city or the agency looking at ensuring that working class communities, renters, even New Yorkers without private driveways and garages have equitable access to EV? Like myself, I have a car, but I live in a building that doesn't allow, doesn't have a parking lot.
Sure. So as we are siting them and as we're getting ready to start these new installations, we're looking at neighborhoods that have less private investment in vehicle charging. We're also looking at lower income neighborhoods to focus on.
Okay. And I just my last question, I suppose. What's the timeline for DOT to transition from feasibility assessments to actual installations, and where are we on that progress?
So we are constantly installing charging. A lot of it, as I mentioned, in our parking lots and parking garages. We have a number of installations underway, and we are gearing up to begin the 600 next year. So
Okay,
they're all moving along.
I guess second to last question is, what happened with some of the agreements that we had, like with Revel and others that were announced a couple years ago from the administration on charging infrastructure, utilizing their garages?
Okay, so encouraging partnerships with private entities
I mean,
off street.
Positive, the mayor had announced maybe 2 years ago a partnership with Revel on
I
EVs.
do recall the announcement.
Okay.
I would need to
I'm
follow
like,
up
did
with-
I dream that?
No,
Okay.
no, absolutely not. And good memory. My understanding is that the company you mentioned is attempting to switch to focusing on charging infrastructure.
Mhm.
As to the specifics of the partnership between the city and Rebel, I think we need to come back to you on that. But yes, I know that there was a big push for that company to move into the charging space.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you. We're going to next hear from Council Member Lewis, followed by Council Member Banks.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning. Thank you for being here today. I just have 2 quick questions. I wanted to know if you could share with us the coordination mechanism between the Parks Department and DOT regarding the tree sidewalk program. Like, what does that look like? What's the tracking? How are you determining what's defective? And what is DOT doing to improve the tree sidewalk program? Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. So I'll begin, and then I'll ask our colleagues at Parks to chime in as well. So sidewalk work that is performed relating to trees can happen relating to tree damage can happen in 2 ways. So when DOT inspects a sidewalk and sees tree damage, we do not issue a violation or a lien to the property owner for any flags, which are squares, that are caused by tree damage. We would only issue a violation for any sidewalk damage that is unrelated to tree damage. So what can happen after we do issue a violation is that we can go in and make the repairs and back charge the owner, or more often, the owner makes those sidewalk repairs themselves. When we go in and do those repairs, we do not charge for anything that is tree related. When a homeowner has questions about how to handle the trees, the tree aspect of it, we work very closely with the Parks Department to give them clear guidance on what they may or may not do as it relates to things like tree prunings and whether an arborist is needed. And Parks can explain that a little bit more. But what's critical here is that we never charge a homeowner for the tree-related expenses, and we make that very clear.
Good morning, Council Member, and thank you for that question. As was mentioned, Parks and DOT both have programs that address sidewalk damage caused by tree roots. With respect to the Trees and Sidewalks program at New York City Parks, this program repairs sidewalks adjacent to tax class 1 properties, which is, yes, you need, sorry about that, thank you. The Parks, Trees and Sidewalks program repairs sidewalks adjacent to tax class 1 properties. Those are 1 to 3 family owner-occupied residential only buildings, where there has been damage caused by the roots of city trees. So repairs are made based on a rating system that includes the severity of damage, the amount of pedestrian traffic, and the size and condition of the tree or trees present. As Parks and DOT's repair programs both address sidewalks damaged by city trees adjacent to these properties, Parks shares our contract site listings with DOT to avoid sending 2 contractors to repair the same location. The 2 agencies also do consult each other when it comes to complex repairs on either program. I'll also mention, as was referenced, that when property owners choose to undertake those repairs, Parks does offer free consultation services to those property owners and their contractors as part of our permitting process.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the administration for being here this morning. Let me just, street repairs is always a major concern, and obviously sidewalk repairs in my district, and I believe that's shared with a lot of my other council members. In my district, I've seen and heard of several incidences regarding broken sidewalks, particularly along Linden Boulevard and Pennsylvania Avenue. And I just want to know how many 311 complaints in my district remain unresolved, and what is the average turnaround time for those sidewalk repairs?
Thank you for that question, Council Member. I don't have the numbers for your district, but we will get them back to you.
I appreciate it.
The way that sidewalk complaints generally work is that we do receive 311 and other forms of complaints that come in. When we receive a sidewalk complaint about an uneven, trip hazard, or dangerous sidewalk, whatever it may be, we send an inspector out to the location. We don't only inspect one location on the block, we inspect the entire block on both sides of the street in order to capture everything that's happening right there on that block and to avoid any disputes between homeowners, that sort of thing. What we next do then, as we discussed, is we would issue a violation if necessary for any non-tree root related work. And then just to take it one step further, over time, we obviously track all of these sidewalk issues, and if we put them into contracts. You're going to say
Thank
something.
you. In the interest of time.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. And specifically on Pennsylvania Avenue, walking towards the 3 line around Hegeman and New Lots Avenue, the sidewalks are lopsided. We have cracks. It's in bad disrepair. When can these issues be addressed?
Okay, we'll get back to you today and let you know if we've already inspected this area. We'll inspect it.
Why are homeowners still being held financially responsible for those repairs? I know that Holden's bill touches on that issue, but we're constantly dealing with that situation. But residents are saying, well, we're being held responsible, and it's the damage is coming from the city, or
Right.
the city
We-
should be responsible.
Yes, we
for
do
that.
not want homeowners to be responsible for tree root damage, and we
Mhm.
do not hold them financially or legally responsible in any way. If there's any confusion over a specific site, we're happy to dig in.
Yeah, we have a couple of sites
Yeah.
that we can get to you as to that particular issue that's been coming up and concern. Um, when it comes to sidewalks being maintained when they are not in front of a private residence or a business, for example, they're next to an abandoned property or could be a government building, what actions are taking? Can the property owner reach out to the city for assistance? Because we have a lot of situations where we have a lot of elderly seniors who can't afford, just because they own a piece of property, they can't afford to cover the damage to their property, and there's just no help or support for them. So I want to know, what is the city doing to address that issue as well?
Okay, so regardless well, actually, let me back up. Every sidewalk is the responsibility of the adjacent property owner. So
Right.
that's across the board. So if there are any properties, government buildings, abandoned properties, seemingly abandoned properties, that is still the adjacent property's responsibility. And we will go and sort of track people down and work with them. However, we're talking about homeowners here and not hurting homeowners who are having difficulty dealing with this process. So again, we will not charge them for tree work, and we
Right.
can help them with that. We can work with Parks and with DOT, with any of them. They would be responsible, however, council member, for any non-tree related sidewalk work if it is not in a state of good repair.
Okay. And to wrap it up,
Last
and,
question.
and I'll come back to the next round. Thank you, Madam Chair. When it comes to speed bumps and speed cameras, if a resident puts in a request for a speed bump, I know a study's then done, but uh, we've seen situations. Well, I'll say this, or rather, who makes that determination if the street is in need of a speed bump rather than a speed cam? Because you have residents say, "Well, this, don't put this." They'll put in a request for a speed bump, but then they say, "Well, you know what? Uh, if they give us a speed cam, we'll prefer that over a speed bump." So, who makes that decision? Whether if you really want to reduce speeding down a particular street, and the data supports the need for that type of regulation, who makes that determination? As opposed to going with a speed bump, or as opposed to going with a speed cam.
Okay. When it comes to safety devices, we have a lot of different tools. You've named two very key tools. So what we would do is we ideally have people bring these safety issues to our attention, and we look at a number of different tools which might be best suited for a site. Just quickly, when it comes to speed humps, there needs to be really an incidence of speeding. We look for the 85th percentile, which is obviously the vast majority of vehicles, to be going 5 miles or more over the speed limit, so 30 miles an hour or more, in order to want to place a speed hump at that spot. And then for speed cameras, we need to make sure that we're within the vicinity of a school. And sometimes what we can do, if a given place is within a school area, is we can send a mobile speed camera unit and see what's happening there, see how much speeding is occurring. So we're happy to work with you
Right.
and
So,
your
so
constituents
just
on
clarity.
either.
So, if a street is deemed as having, there's a need to stop the speeding, and who makes the determination whether it be a speed bump or a speed cam? Who
Well,
would make that?
ultimately, the agency would make that
Agency.
determination.
Right.
Obviously, we want the feedback of whoever is requesting it, and we might even come back and say, hey, we have a different idea for this
Okay.
street. Yeah.
Thank you. Cool.
Thank you for that. I'm going to pivot over to medians. How many medians are there in the city? And while you're looking for that data, I'd like to also know how many medians have pedestrian refuge islands.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we have about 5.8 million square yards of medians within the city. I don't have a figure for you of how many pedestrian refuge islands there are, but often in areas with medians, we also do have the islands.
Thank you for that. What factors lead DOT to design or reconstruct a street to include a median, and what characteristics of a street are taken into consideration by DOT when implementing medians?
Okay, so medians can be very helpful as a safety feature on large, wide, two-way streets to separate the direction of traffic. Obviously, we want people to be crossing at intersections, but sometimes on long stretches, medians are also useful. If people are not crossing at the intersection, it's another safe refuge for pedestrians to be present.
The U.S. Department of Transportation's Federal Highway Administration recommends that transportation agencies consider medians in areas with a mix of pedestrian and vehicle traffic volumes over 9,000 vehicles per day, and travel speeds of 35 miles per hour or greater, mid-block crossings and approaches to multi-lane intersections. Does DOT follow these guidelines?
Absolutely. We follow those guidelines, and then we usually take it a step further, and wherever we can, we do like to have concrete medians.
So how does DOT decide whether to, one, install a regular or raised median, or two, implement a pedestrian refuge island? And what specific advantages and disadvantages do these types of medians have?
Okay. The most critical location is within the crosswalk, so pedestrian refuge islands would certainly be a priority. We also do love the medians, but wherever we put in medians, like concrete and the time and effort involved is a costly endeavor, so we can't always put them everywhere. We look for the locations that have the most safety issues and really need to have additional safety measures like a median.
When medians are implemented at a specific location, does the city try to include trees or plantings along the median? And if so, what type of greenery are added? And when does it make the most sense to add them?
Yes, we love to be able to add greenery to medians. We work closely with parks. If a median is about 7 feet wide or greater, that would be appropriate for planting. We also have to take into account whether there are utility structures below, if planting on the median would block traffic signals or any other types of issues like that. So as we complete our projects, what we do, or as we're designing them really, is we do an analysis of whether or not vegetation is recommended. And we send that over to the Parks Department. They have their lead forester for every borough look at that plan and then work with us to confirm if they will be able to support plants in that median. Of course, a lot has to do with some of the factors I mentioned, and in addition, the maintenance arrangements.
And Chair, just for the record, thanks to Local Law 94 from last year, the city is required to plant over 1 linear mile of planted medians. So that's work that we've done in partnership with you.
What was you treaded off towards the end? That's work what?
We've done in partnership with the City Council.
Okay. Also, I'd like to acknowledge that we're joined by Councilmember Areola online. Does DOT and DPR work together when implementing medians that have trees, shrubs, or other greenery? And I ask this, and I know that Councilmember Banks alluded to some of this, but just to be more pointed with the question, we find, especially in my district, where the medians may have greenery and it's not kept, it's not well manicured. And there are times where it's DOTs and there are other times where it's a different agency. And oftentimes it's unclear who's responsible. It takes a long time. And even the rotation isn't as frequent as it's needed. Case in point, Arbor and East, which is a development coming underway in Rockaway. We now have a nature preserve there. We have a lot of greenery that are part of the streetscape there now, and I get a lot of complaints about how unkept it is, and there's just not a routine focus on making sure that they are trimmed and making sure that the trash is gone from around there. And so I wanted to understand how you all, because I know you're going to say, yes, we work together. So I really want to be more pointed and say, what does that look like? And how do you be ahead of it instead of not being reactionary, but be, proactive in the maintenance of our streetscapes?
Okay, I'll start and then I'll ask Parks to jump in. So DOT does maintain planted medians under certain circumstances. A lot of our great streets locations are now locations that we maintain the vegetation. Those include Grand Concourse, 4th Avenue, and that maintenance consists of horticultural care, and we do this through a contractor, like watering, mulching, weeding, and then trash and litter removal, maybe some irrigation system repair and things like that. And those are a limited number of locations, and if we can find them here, we'll let you know what those are. But it's 2 in the Bronx, 1 in Brooklyn, and 1 in Queens. And we spend about $750,000 a year on those locations. Other
I'm sorry, can you give me that number again?
Sure, it's $745,000 that we on landscape maintenance.
That's just for the landscape, but does that include the cleaning as
That
well?
includes litter removal
Litter
yes.
removal.
For those locations. And we can get you more details if I can't get them to you right now.
It'll be great to see how it's broken down by borough.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that is like a subset of what is out there. Hardscaped medians are cleaned by sanitation, and planted medians with trees are generally cleaned by the Parks Department. So I don't know if you guys want to add a little bit to that.
Thanks, and thanks, Councilmember, for that. Yeah, it's specific to the Arverne East stretch you're referring to. I personally am not familiar with the details there jurisdictionally or otherwise, but broadly speaking, yes, as Margaret noted, that's correct. Although I will note that it is, especially with, let's say, medians or other those types of constructions that have been created in recent years, it's often the case where there's a maintenance partner that's involved. So it sort of does depend on location, which I understand can sometimes lead to some question or confusion. But the agencies work closely together to resolve that whenever possible, as quickly as possible. But yes, broadly speaking, the parks with the universe of medians under its care, we definitely do our best to address those, as often as is practicable.
Thank you for that. Also, while we're on medians, can DOT provide an update regarding the median located off of the South Conduit in Rosedale that we requested for repair? When we did the walkthrough with the commissioner, we were told that the agency was going to go and fix it. That particular median is, wholly decayed and broken up and everything like that, and DOT had committed to repairing it. Where are we with that?
I do remember that. I will get you an update. We do want to repair, I think if I'm not mistaken, it's for several blocks, but there was one particular block that we were going to try to focus on first. I will get you an update about that.
This wasn't a part of a larger one.
It's not.
This was an individual one because we had done a few sites in that visit, and one of the civic organizations had requested it. And so it'll be great if while we're in the hearing, if we could get an update on that at some point. And while we're looking at updates, we also were told that we would be getting a traffic light on Farmers Boulevard nearby the Robert Couch Senior Facility. The mayor had visited and saw firsthand how dangerous it is for the seniors to cross that street. That was now over a year ago, and we haven't seen anything on that or heard any updates. So it'll be good while we're in the hearing if we can get an update for that too. Pivoting to streets and roadways. How many street resurfacing projects were completed in fiscal year 2024?
So we resurfaced about 1,150 lane miles in 2024.
You said 150.
No, I'm sorry, 1,150.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What is DOT doing to improve resurfacing and make it more efficient?
So we are always looking to get more resurfacing and to make it quicker and more efficient. We have really maximized a lot of efficiencies already. Just to touch on a few, we have Central Depot, where we send asphalt trucks out of continuously during paving operations so that there's a steady supply of asphalt coming in to keep the crew very productive. We've also maximized our percent of milling in our mix. It's about 40%, and we're actually looking to go potentially even as high as 50% out of our Brooklyn asphalt plant, which is another efficiency because you're not throwing away recycled material. Instead, you're putting it back into a mix. You're saving money, you're recycling, you're making that more efficient. So those are several things. Anything, Monty?
Just also add, part of what we're improving is the inspections process because, historically we do that visually. We have people go to determine the condition of the street by driving all of them, but we're investing in technology to be able to use camera and artificial intelligence technology to better evaluate the streets to make sure we're going to the right places.
Thank you for that. What is the average rating of streets in the city for 2024, and how does it differ from borough to borough?
Thanks. So it does differ from borough to borough. The ratings of streets rated good can vary from about in the 60s to about 80%, 84% rated good. Different streets or different boroughs have historically different issues with them. So for example, in Queens, we've had issues with streets not being built to grade. We have a lot of old streets that may not be on a concrete base, which makes them kind of crumble very quickly. I know you're familiar with that. Those are streets that need to be reconstructed before they're going to be in a state of good repair. Other locations are just in low-lying areas that are constantly wet, and that wetness and the freeze-thaw cycle also takes a toll on those roads. So different boroughs, depending on like the topography of them and the historical investment in the streets, can therefore lead to the different ratings between the boroughs.
To that point, you just reminded me also in terms of another commitment from this administration along Edgemere Avenue in the 50s, because we recently had from I think it's Beach 35th Street to about Beach 40th Street reconstructed. It was raised, reconstructed. We had gotten a commitment to finish out the other part of that roadway. And then there's a small pocket of a lot, I'll call it, that is around, I think, Beach 56th Street maybe, and I'll circle back on the exact location, where a lot of cars park, but it's just on rubble. And we had also gotten a commitment that it would be cemented and made like an actual space where cars can truly park, and so that it wouldn't look as bad as it does right now. So while we're in the hearing, it'll be great to have an update on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
I want to go back to sidewalks as well. Does the city track how many sidewalks had defects that required property owners to replace or repair sidewalks adjacent to their property?
Yes, we do. We have a large database that tracks each property.
What's the most common defect?
So we have flags, which are the squares that get pushed up basically and create a trip hazard.
From what?
Like with a lip. You know what? Sidewalks can only last so many years. Again, in New York, we have freezing, we have thawing, things shift. It's sort of the natural thing, like they don't last indefinitely.
More specifically, sorry, Commissioner, more specifically, because I just want to be direct just in the interest of time. How many of them are caused by trees?
35%.
And what is the average cost of replacement or repair?
So we put that work out into a contract. The contracts go through DDC, they're bid, they can come in at different prices. I think currently our price overall is something in the range of $35 a square foot.
I'm gonna also ask a few questions on behalf of Councilmember Narcisse, who, as I mentioned, was virtual. And she writes, in my district along Kings Highway, I've noticed new medians with unusually high curbs. Can DOT explain the purpose of designing them this way? And should we expect this higher curb design to become the standard for medians and streetscapes citywide moving forward? How does DOT hold contractors accountable for sidewalk and median projects that run over budget or are poorly executed? How does DOT determine whether street repair work is scheduled for overnight hours versus during the day? And what factors are considered in making the decision? And let me know if you need me to repeat any of that.
Okay, I'll start with some of that, and then Paula Choa will jump in. So the standard height of a median or a sidewalk should be 7 inches, and we would not install above that amount. And if it is, it's something I would want to be aware of. We can inspect the location that you just mentioned. It should not be higher than that. In terms of overnight hours, on very busy streets where we cannot close lanes without large traffic impacts, we would require overnight hours. So we issue about 750,000 street opening or street work permits a year. And our staff looks at each one to understand what type of roadway it's on. If it's on a massive, bus lane, highly trafficked roadway, we're probably not going to allow daytime hours. We are going to require that to be nighttime hours. But Paul will talk a little bit more about the last item.
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember. I think this is a perfect example of us working with parks. Kings Highway it's a capital project that DDC is carrying out for us. I believe the project will be finished next year and the plantings will be installed next year. Obviously, the DDC builds out the work, and then the plantings are the last sort of cherry on the cake. And there was coordination well in advance of that work to make sure that the plantings that were going in were something that was to park standard and to DOT's preference. So, as Margaret mentioned it right, if there are issues, the project is ongoing, so it hasn't been completed. If there are issues, we should know. As for the quality of the project, every capital project typically has guarantees after. Sometimes we have run into issues, rare, but we do run into issues where the concrete, for example, that gets poured is defected or it doesn't last as long as it should. In that case, we do hold the contractors responsible for fixing it, either us or DDC, depending on who's managing the contract.
Chair, if I may add regarding the Kings Highway medians, as Paul mentioned, this is a very good example of Parks and DOT collaborating. We've been working for several years now on the plans for this project. And the medians are raised there because of the historic difficulty in maintaining trees and vegetation on Kings Highway in particular. I've personally seen, significant tree loss on that corridor. I've seen trucks kind of crossing the medians before they were reconstructed, and, the tree fatalities, I would say, as a result of that. So, collaboratively, we worked on this design to ensure that those medians could sustain trees in a way that the older medians could not. So I think this is the type of success we're talking about here.
Thank you for those responses, folks. I'm just going to jump in really quickly on a second round of questions around the pilot program that I missed a little bit earlier to ask. I just want to clarify, when we're speaking of the pilot, we were speaking of the Volt Post pilot that you folks conducted. Okay, great. So thank you. We got some of those takeaways. I also understand that Volt Post was recently awarded a state grant to develop lamppost EV charging in certain parts of New York, including the New York City area. Is DOT involved with them at all in this project?
They have mentioned, I believe it's about $2 million that they have in NYSERDA grants, I believe. We have been in conversations, but I think as Monty mentioned, we don't see at least right now, a path forward for that type of technology usage in New York City. But, we're in constant communication with them. They have talked to us about that.
Okay, so if they're, I'm just asking from the types of conversations that you're having with them on their grant that they receive from NYSERDA, if they have to do stuff in the New York City metro area and outside of our city, do we know what percentage of their work and what it might include?
I don't know exactly what the terms of the contract is, or the terms of the grant is, but I believe it's New York State related. I'm sure they would prefer New York City, but as we mentioned, we did pilot technology. We're not quite ready to pull the trigger on doing more with that type of technology, but I don't want to speak. I don't know enough about the grant.
Okay, I'll definitely reach out to the team at NYSERDA. I have a solid relationship with them. I'm working on several projects in my district as well. And just a small question on some of the medians. I feel almost every season, whatever change of season it is in my district, we have several medians that we're almost, and I consistently joke, like it's like the Spider-Man meme, every agency pointing at each other for responsibility. No one really knows who owns the median. How do I, entering, my next term, help navigate some of this with you folks at DOT, with the Parks Department? Right now I have supplemental services that go out and try to clean these medians as often as possible. I've even asked at the time when we had a new DOT Bronx commissioner, if we can look at one of these medians, the particular one on Rosedale, to revamp that, make it maybe more comprehensive, maybe with some seating, protect some of the trees that are there, because folks do park in that area at times. Even maybe some angled parking to add some additional spots, as we've had some new housing in that area. So just want to get a better idea of how we can approach this, and maybe set an MOU between agencies or something to make sure the responsibilities standing in the right place, and the community knows who to go to when we have some cleanliness issues or some infrastructure issues.
Yes, so good question. Rosedale in particular has been something I know we have worked with the Parks Department on, and there has been trimming and litter removal. I think Rosedale does need an overhaul, as you mentioned, and I think we have to decide with you and with the community, what does that mean? Is it partial parking? Is it partial green space? And then figure out with parks how to implement that. And if you want to help us with those conversations, I think we need to do that, or it's going to be a recurring thing, because right now it's technically green space, but as we know, it doesn't really function in that way.
Yeah, I would really appreciate, and I'll have my teams reach out, and maybe we can start off on some virtual meetings to kind of discuss this. It's not just Rosedale. We also have the medians in Castle Hill by Castle Hill NYCHA campus. But I agree with the overhaul. Obviously, I'm always for maintaining and optimizing the green spaces where we can. But if it's going to come down to no one having the responsibility and me having to send my supportive sanitation services down there, I mean, realistically, the Parks Department, when you folks ask them to go out, they call my office and ask me to send ACE out. So it comes back to me every single time, and I don't necessarily believe that's the best use of my supportive services when one of the agencies has to hold some responsibility.
Yeah, and Councilmember, you point to a very real issue. I don't think as we mentioned, we have a $750,000 contract just to cover a handful of medians. The reality is, we wish we could do more. It is ultimately a resource issue. I'm glad you're using ACE. I encourage other council members who have this issue to use ACE. But it ultimately comes down to a resource question.
Thank you. I appreciate that, folks.
I'd like to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilmember Juan. We'll have questions from Councilmember Banks. Please adhere to the time.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Particularly, and also to share the same remarks given by Councilmember Fiaris the mediums in my district are in need of attention to along Linden Boulevard, Flatlands Avenue. We definitely need some help and assistance on maintaining them and bringing them up to some type of standard that I think is a long beautification, whatever, but something needs to be done to assist those mediums. Particularly when it comes to back to some forestry questions or tree pruning questions on Avenue A between 92nd and 93rd Streets. A homeowner has repeatedly contacted Parks and Forestry about a tree on their property. She submitted multiple tickets, and while someone did come out to trim the few branches, a crew stated to her that they could not finish the job unless she stated that the tree was directly threatening her house. So they came out, they trimmed a few, and they basically told her they couldn't finish the job. So how can this homeowner get proper assistance to have the issue fully addressed? And then the next question is related to the round for tree pruning as well. A homeowner on Glenmore Avenue is facing a similar situation. The roots of a nearby tree are elevating and damaging the sidewalk, and she reported it that the tree is also causing damage to the roof of her home. Despite submitting multiple tickets, she has not received adequate help from Parks. This location is next to a Green Thumb, a garden that is directly beside the property. And we want to know when can she expect the support needed to resolve this before the situation becomes more serious.
Okay, thank you for those questions, Councilmember. Just one clarifying question. The tree you referenced on Glenville Avenue, is that tree growing from the the Green Thumb Garden, or is
Yes, I believe the footprint of the trees and it's on the green, but it's leaning over into her property and it's causing damage.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I'm not personally familiar with either of these cases and be happy to follow up on the specifics later, but just to address
Well, the
them
complaints are in.
Yeah.
They've reached out. There are multiple complaints put in.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm happy to address them from a general perspective if that's helpful.
Okay. Well, if we can get these residents some assistance, I'll greatly appreciate it. And the last question is pertaining to when there's a street repair, when street repairs are done, if there's damage that's done to the sidewalk because of the street repair, how long does it take to come and fix those sidewalks that have been damaged? Because we have situations where the street repair has been done and they have not come back to fix the sidewalk.
Yeah, thank you, council member. So as soon as we become aware of if there's a complaint, somebody sees that somebody was working in the street, like a utility, then we will send out an inspector. And if they have not restored correctly, as you described, then we will immediately issue a notice to them to have to correct it right away. Depending on what the issue is, we might issue a summons as well that comes with a fine. But they are if they had taken a permit out with us, they're responsible for restoring to the condition that was there before.
So is there a backlog or something? Is there something that's preventing? Because this should be automatic. If there's damage that's done to the sidewalk, that creates a liability on every level. So if there's damage that's done to the sidewalk, it should be a automatic fix.
Yeah.
When they come back and fix it, they shouldn't have to wait for
give
me to come to a committee meeting to bring that up to DOT.
Yeah, we're happy to. If you have a specific location,
We have a specific location.
follow
We
up
can
on it.
definitely get you that information. Hopefully, we can get that issue resolved quickly.
And then,
Thank you.
Councilmember, if I can just add to that, we issue 750,000 street permits a year. We
Okay.
do not have the ability to inspect each and every one of them after whoever it was, the plumber, the utility, whoever has come and gone. So that's why we do rely on individual property owners, what have you, constituents, yourself, your office, to inform us at times if there's a problem.
All right, well, we'll definitely get you that information. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I want to ask a couple questions on a few of the legislation being heard in today's hearing. The first is on my bill, Intro 1104, and the question is for DOT, EDC, and SBS, and generally speaking, in terms of what studies have been conducted to assess the feasibility of expanding the city's network of ferry terminals? And are there any new locations that the city is considering for expansion?
Hello, council member. Thank you. So this summer we launched the NYC Ferry Optimization Plan, which is our effort to make the existing service more efficient. We got a lot of feedback from that, and we are reviewing that. That we expect to be wrapped up this fall, and then we are going to be able to pivot and think about expansion. So we will have more to say about how we will look at expansion later this year.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that, and hopefully Rockaway will be in the running. The one thing I will say is pointing back to, there was an article about 2 or 3 years ago, I think, from the city talking about the type of neighborhoods that the ferry exists in terms of not really focusing on, it has not been successful in focusing on communities that are transit deserts. And so wanting to be able to leverage another mode of transportation for transit deserts is something that I think should be high on the priority list when EDC is determining where to expand as well. But thank you for that. Next, I want to ask some questions around intro number 221 from Councilmember Holden, and this is for parks. How many sidewalk trees are there in the city, and roughly how many are situated in front of 1, 2, and 3 family homes?
As of our 2015 tree census, which is the last time we've done that count until the one that's
a long time. When are you going to do another one?
The 2025 census has just started.
Okay.
So as of 2015, we had over 666,000 street trees, and but we do not classify those in terms of whether they're in front of 1, 2, or 3 family homes or other tax classes.
As you are beginning the new census, is there a way to begin to identify that? And it's important, especially because of the type of liability that comes to homeowners, particularly small homeowners, and how the tree impacts their property.
That's not something that we've yet explored, but something we certainly could look into.
What is Parks doing to improve and maintain trees and other greenery in the city?
So, of course, we're actively planting trees, and we plant over 130 different species of trees in an effort to ensure that our urban forest population is resilient to urban conditions and pests and diseases. In terms of maintaining our trees, we follow a tree risk management program where our trained inspectors assess every tree that we receive a request about based on the likelihood of a tree or tree part falling, the potential for impacting people or property, and the consequences should that type of thing happen. Yes.
Within the Parks Department, the division that focuses on the trees, what is their budget compared to, like, in terms of like the tree stump removal program versus those who are doing the planting? I'm curious in terms of how equitable that is. I'm thinking even right now, a tree that I've been passing for the past week on Farmers Boulevard between 112th Road and 113th Avenue. It's a massive tree that has fallen down and has been there for at least a few weeks now. In Rosedale, my district, there was another tree that fell down on someone's property, on someone's car, and when they called 311, they were told it was going to take 8 weeks for that tree to be removed. My office reached out, and of course it got removed sooner, but just wanting to understand what the resources look like and how the agency is prioritizing which part of that division gets what.
Sure. I think it's important to note that there's different funding resources. Our tree planting is a capital program, while our maintenance work is expense funded. So our maintenance work is done partly under contracts through our block pruning program, and we also have contracts for tree and stump removal and pest and disease treatment, things like that. But it's our in-house crews, our own staff, who respond to the more urgent complaints, the things that cannot await that kind of routine maintenance.
And what's the cycle again for the pruning, the tree pruning?
That routine block pruning is a 7-year cycle.
And in order to make it a much more frequent cycle, what would it require in terms of funding?
Well, the industry standard is a roughly 7-year cycle, so we are following best practices, but the key is being able to respond in between that 7-year cycle to conditions that are more urgent. So our tree risk management system allows us to identify the conditions that are the most urgent and address those first. Of course, if it goes without saying that if we did have more resources, we could shorten the turnaround time for any of those, more urgent conditions.
Under your tree and sidewalk program, Department of Parks and Recreation helps certain homeowners repair severe cases of sidewalk damage caused by sidewalk trees. How many sidewalks do you repair as a part of this program each year? And is there a need for the program to be expanded?
So with our current budget, we are able to repair approximately 1,350 sites a year.
1,300?
1,350, yes.
So you go up to that amount each year, I imagine.
Yes.
And do you feel like there's a need to expand that program?
The demand for this program far exceeds our resources.
And how would DPR be able to expand the program?
Well, certainly if there were more funding allocated to this program, we would be able to make more repairs to tree damaged sidewalks. There may be limitations in terms of procuring contracts and contractor availability that we might run into, but yeah, I'll leave it there.
In terms of expanding the program, would you say that based on the requests that come in, the program would be justified to double the number that it does, triple the number?
It's hard to frame it that way exactly. I will say that we receive roughly 10,000 requests for this program every year, many of which are duplicates, but that does far exceed the 1,350 or so that we can repair annually.
Are requests for repair under this program ever denied by parks due to the lack of availability with funding?
I wouldn't say they're denied. We use this a priority system that I described earlier to...
Grading system?
It is a grading system.
When's the last time that grading system was updated?
Approximately 5 years ago.
Really? Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I think that it's pretty flawed with some of the outgrown trees that my constituents have experienced, and the hazards. I've sent videos with people tripping in front of people's property because of the way it has broken up the cement on the sidewalk to create a peak, and especially in the wintertime, it's even more of a risk. And some of them are just blatant. We had to bring the parks commissioner out into a part of my district to see how this massive tree was impacting this house, where the roots were coming into the basement of the house. But the grading system, until we visually went there and I was there with the commissioner, it wasn't until that time that the grading system said, okay, this tree needs to come out. But we shouldn't have to, I think as the majority leader said earlier, we are supplementing the support to the agencies, but this is the agency's work to do this. And so that grading system, I have found, has, as a result, rejected requests for tree removals or, just ways to mitigate whatever is happening in front of some of these small property owners' homes. And so that is something that the Parks Department should absolutely look into. How much funding would parks need in order to repair all damage caused by sidewalk trees?
Well, in our system right now, we have, excuse me, I just want to get the numbers correct here. in the neighborhood of 11,000 sites in our system now that are rated 75 or above. And so those are, not just the most extreme situations of damaged sidewalks, but, the much more kind of moderate types of damage. And we estimate it would cost approximately $117.5 million to make all of those repairs.
What can the city and homeowners do to prevent the damage from reoccurring on repaired sidewalks?
Sure, that's a really good question, and that's something we do try to address when homeowners and contractors come to us for permits for repair, and we can provide those design consultation services. Generally speaking, a tree will outlive multiple sidewalks if it's cared for, and there are a couple of standard approaches to ensuring that a sidewalk is safe and long-lasting when making a repair around a growing tree. The first step is usually enlarging the tree bed, just simply creating a larger opening in the sidewalk. The second can be, adjusting the grade of the sidewalk, a gentle ramping, which of course has to fit within ADA standards. But those are the two kind of most common approaches that do resolve those problems.
Thank you for raising that point. So in front of my office on Mott Avenue, there was a streetscape redesign with the downtown revitalization, and the tree pit was created larger. It has, as a result, done a couple of things. It has restricted the accessibility on that sidewalk because now, while a part of, even on Beach 20th from Mott Avenue towards Cornega, the ability to walk through that street is less, even though the sidewalk has been expanded because the tree pits have been made bigger. But going back to in front of my office on Mott Avenue, the tree pit was made very large, but it's no mulch or anything in there. And so as a result, people have fallen in there, including my staff member, and been hurt. And so we've reached out to the parks departments to try and figure out what to do, whether it's to shrink that pit or to put some mulch in there, just so that it's not a deep, dive into that pit. And so I would really appreciate if the Parks Department could look at that. I'm not sure what can be done on Beach 20th Street because there's been a lot of hard infrastructure. I don't know if there's an update on that bike lane on that street, Commissioner.
I don't have an update on that for you today.
It'd be good to get one soon. Because again, there's a lot of hard infrastructure that was put on Beach 20th Street that may have had great intentions, but in terms of in actuality, it has not resulted in the outcomes that I think the agency has saw it fit for. And so again, when you walk down the street, if two people are trying to walk down that sidewalk, it's really tight to walk down because of how wide the pits are. And just needing something to help to alleviate that deep dip into the pit that exists.
And along those lines, in terms of the depth issue there, that's, you noted it's in proximity to your DO. What street was that? Just to kind of, sorry.
That one is on, right in front of 1931 Mott Avenue.
Great. And then I'll just point out the obvious that, there's at times, given that sidewalks are of a finite width, the efforts that you heard about expanding tree beds, which end up being very helpful in terms of eventually reducing, lift and other signs of damage. There's a trade-off there where it does take up more of that width, although everything is, I'm sure, always done in accordance with ADA requirements and other things.
Yeah,
there is sort of
if someone is riding down Beach 20th in a wheelchair and then you and I are walking down, like, we can't clear each other to get there.
Yeah, I mean, out there in the streetscape, it is not uncommon.
Purpose of expanding the sidewalk, because you would think you would want to have more pedestrian space. And so by expanding that sidewalk, we've also done a road diet, and that is a major corridor for our fire trucks to go down to get to the other parts of the peninsula. So it has created a lot of safety concerns.
I think it just speaks to the complexity of the streetscape, right? That there are these competing interests and values and needs that, need to be held in balance. So we hear you loud and clear.
Mm-hmm. Which is why, I always said, and I know we had talked about legislation in the past around this in terms of not just looking to downtown, making decisions for communities. Talk to the local firehouses and see what they need, what the egress is for them to be able to navigate safely and keep their times down to respond to emergencies. Talk to the community boards in terms of what type of usage we want for the streets, because again, we did a tour with Gersh from Streets Blog actually, and brought him over to see the bike lane, and we saw one deliverista that went by about 2 or 3 times, and don't get me wrong, he deserves to have a safe rite of passage as well, but it's not a utilized corridor. It's not connected to anything. That's not the community that exists on that particular roadway, and so again, it requires more engagement with community to understand how we want to use our sidewalks and our streets and be able to get around. But again, I understand and recognize and acknowledge that there is an intent that is put in place when you all are designing these projects that are well-meaning, like well-intentioned, but in actuality, I'm just communicating in terms of what some of the challenges have been. But I would love to see some mulch in that pit. Okay, so moving on. RFP for furnishing and installing accessible pedestrian signals. DOT is currently doing a RFP for a contract for furnishing and installing accessible pedestrian signals, which are critical for enabling visually impaired New Yorkers to navigate our streets safely. Are these installations in compliance with all applicable standards?
Yes, council member, and in fact, our APS team in traffic operations has been installing more APSs than what were required as part of the court settlement. Essentially, we get credit for any extra APSs we do in a given year because the goal each year keeps going up. So we're actually ahead of the APS installations. The traffic operations team has done a fantastic job at streamlining a lot of the processes internally to make sure that we give the contractors enough work for the APS numbers to keep reaching the APS numbers and in fact exceeding them.
My understanding is that DOT is in the process of renewing the current contract without any adjustment to unit prices. Has DOT examined whether the unit price remains fair and reasonable given the current market?
Yeah, so I can give you some context. So typically, our contracts have a current, like a set period and then a renewal period. The renewal period is standard for any construction contract. The vendors or the contracting, the companies bidding on those contracts know about the renewal terms, and the renewal terms are set at the exact same rates as the original contract. This is standard for every type of construction contract. So I believe in this case, I think we just have some whiny contractors who don't understand the terms that the renewal contract has, have the exact same terms of the original contract. No. Yeah.
So are you saying that it gives room for adjustments?
It does not. The renewal term does not give room for adjustments on prices.
So with the cost of inflation, right?
They should take that into account when they bid for contracts.
Is
Just
DOT
to add one quick thing, we are putting that contract out again, and we may not need the full year starting in January of the renewal 1-year period. We may have new set of contracts that they can then bid on.
Is DOT aware of complaints raised by contractors regarding Is DOT aware of complaints raised by contractors regarding DOT's administration of this contract?
We do that from time to time, council member, and we want to make sure that the specs in the contract that we put out are very clear so that the contractors don't run into these issues where they're underestimating costs, for example. But we do tweak the contracts from time to time to make sure that we are putting out the correct specs. I would say that, given the amount of installations that we're doing on APSs, we do learn of new things from time to time, and then those will be incorporated into the future contract.
Okay, because many employ electricians that come from my district, and they're claiming that they're being asked to absorb escalating costs instead of being fairly compensated. So that is a concern if that is the case, that DOT is putting out something that is suppressing what the true cost and value should be. So I would like DOT to look at that. And does the contract contain mechanisms to provide for the equitable, and I guess you answered that in terms of the equitable adjustments, you're saying it does not, they just should put in what they think the cost is.
That's right. Usually these contracts, depending on the contract, it could be, it's usually, if it's a bid, we go with the lowest priced qualified vendor, and we are using the prices that they're bidding on.
Okay. Moving to resurfacing and milling. In the recent solicitation for contract milling under DOT's resurfacing program, what was the rationale for removing the separate line item for crossing guards and treating it as incidental to roadway grinding, given that specific locations may be unknown at the time of bidding?
Okay, Chair, we're going to need to research that a little bit further and get back to you.
Okay. So let me give you my other questions on that, and
Sure.
let me know what you can answer and what you have to get back to me on. So for a program that spans hundreds of miles of city streets, how has DOT assessed the implications of applying a uniform approach to work zone safety across locations with varying conditions and complexity?
Yes, safety is the top priority, both of our workforce and when we have contractors performing milling in the streets, their workforces. We're very clear on internal guidelines of which roadways you require a backup truck with an impact attenuator. On highways, if you're paving lanes on a highway, how many lanes you close, how you slow down the traffic approaching the work site. And we also have in every division, we have a group of sort of like safety monitors, a team of people that go from work site to work site to make sure that the safety is set up properly, both for our workforce as well as members of the public who might be traveling or walking near our work sites.
How does DOT anticipate the revised bid structure where work zone and public safety is no longer a separate bid item? Will this impact on-site coordination and discussions about safety during the project execution?
So which contracts are you referring to?
Still with the resurfacing and milling.
Okay, so it's just with milling, and it kind of relates, I think, to your first question about crossing guards, so we can research that more fully and get back to you.
Okay. Can I expect
Councilmember, if I may too, whenever we put out these contracts, we have a pre-bid conference, and any contractor interested in asking these questions usually submits questions, and then we respond in writing. So I'm not sure if this is an active procurement or not, but we do have a mechanism to answer all these questions ahead of a contractor bidding.
Is this the first time you're hearing this, though?
This one in particular, I'm not sure if it's been raised before, but just in general, any bid that we put out, we do have an ability for contractors to ask these
my
questions.
understanding is DOT has been contacted about these concerns.
We got a letter like yesterday regarding this, so I don't have all the information right now.
Okay, and that was the first time you heard about it?
Yes.
Okay. So can we say in a week I could expect a letter?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to 31st Council District. Cornega Avenue and Beach 19th Street. The current closures appear to begin around 7 to 8 a.m., coinciding with school drop-offs and commuter travel. This timing has contributed to significant congestion affecting the local community as well as the school operations. Could the permit be amended so that the closures begin after 9 a.m. to reduce the peak hour impact?
Yes, we'll look at that. Most likely we can do that.
Okay. Eastbound lane on the freeway. The closure of the eastbound lane beneath the freeway is creating substantial delays in the surrounding area as well. Would it be feasible to schedule this work during overnight to minimize daytime congestion?
Okay, we'll also look at that.
Okay. Thank you for that. And then my last question, there's a DDC project happening in Rosedale, massive infrastructure work that's being done there. And there are some homeowners that had indicated to me in a meeting about a month or so ago that they received letters about violations with the sidewalk. But a part of this construction that's happening is taking up the sidewalk, reconstructing it anyway. So considering that, and because these homeowners are enduring a lot to deal with this construction, is there a way that they are not in violation, considering that the city is repairing them anyway?
Yeah, so the tricky thing here is that because sidewalk repair is the responsibility of the homeowner, before any capital work is done on a sidewalk, DDC, we go in and document which flags are not.
But all these
in
years
good
they
repair
hadn't done that until like now
until
they're coming
prior to the
yeah.
project. Right. It's a tricky thing with capital reconstruction. And the bind that we're in is that for public money to pay for sidewalk work, that is technically the responsibility of the homeowner. That's the issue. But maybe we can sit with you, with also with DDC, and look at the sidewalks in question, like what we saw prior to the project beginning. How many flags are we saying is the responsibility of the homeowner? And we recognize it's a large pill to swallow when you are undergoing all that disruption of a capital reconstruction, and on top of it to get a bill for portions of the sidewalk. So maybe we can sit down and get into the details of that together.
And then also there was a homeowner there were two homeowners. One, like they both didn't have sidewalks. When they bought the property, it didn't have a sidewalk. One person actually installed the sidewalk, but then got fined. I'm not sure if it just didn't meet the criteria or whatever, but the other homeowner did not do it because they were told by the city agency. I'm waiting for them to give me more details. But they said that an agency told them not to put a sidewalk or they would be fined. And so that person didn't, but now is being given a violation for not having a sidewalk that has been constructed.
Okay, we can sort through that, and there may be something in there we can correct.
Okay, so that's great. DOT has approved a speed reducer on 136th Avenue between 244th Street and Hook Creek Boulevard, but has not provided any timeline on installation. When can we expect this installation to take place? Is obviously a priority in my district, and we've heard multiple complaints about this corridor in terms of the safety and lack thereof.
Okay. The good thing is everybody loves speed humps and speed reducers. We actually install and then reinstall about 800 per year, and we've been doing a lot of work on overtime to make up the backlog. But we do have some in the queue, so I will find out where 136th Avenue is, and we can try to pull that up.
Thank you. I think we are good on questions now.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. I now open the hearing for public testimony. I remind members of the public that this is a government proceeding and that decorum shall be observed at all times. As such, members of the public shall remain silent at all times. The witness table is reserved for people who wish to testify. No video recording or photography is allowed from the witness table. Further, members of the public may not present the audio or video recordings as testimony, but may submit transcripts of such recordings to the Sergeant at Arms for inclusion in the hearing record. If you wish to speak at today's hearing, please fill out an appearance card with the Sergeant at Arms and wait to be recognized. When recognized, you will have 2 minutes to speak on today's hearing topics. Oversight, maintaining, greening, and enhancing the city's sidewalks, medians, and streetscapes. Intro number 169, a local law to amend the administrative code of the City of New York in relation to the installation of electric vehicle charging equipment on lampposts. Intro number 221, a local law to amend the administrative code of the City of New York in relation to requiring the Parks Department to repair damage caused by trees owned by the City of New York. Intro number 262, a local law to amend the administrative code of the City of New York in relation to requiring the installation of speed humps on roadways adjacent to any park equal or greater than 1 acre. Intro number 270, a local law to amend the administrative code of the City of New York in relation to special activation of the open streets program on certain holidays and time periods with significant pedestrian traffic. Intro number 882, a local law to amend the administrative code of the City of New York in relation to the installation and maintenance of tree guards. Intro number 1104, a local law in relation to a study and report on the feasibility of new ferry terminals. Intro number 1147, a local law to amend the administrative code of the City of New York in relation to requiring the cleaning of medians at least once per quarter. Intro number 1154, a local law in relation to establishing a high visibility pavement marking pilot program and the repeal of this local law upon the expiration thereof. Intro number 1233, a local law to amend the administrative code of the City of New York in relation to the planting of vegetation on new medians separating bicycle lanes from motorized vehicle traffic. If you have a written statement or additional written testimony you wish to submit for the record, please provide a copy of that testimony to the Sergeant at Arms. You may also email written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov within 72 hours of this hearing. Audio and video recordings will not be accepted. We will now call the first panel. Aditi Desai, Peter Resnigio. This handwriting, Peter, it's not great. Samuel Aluto, John Corey, representing the Rockaway Peninsula, and Christopher Leon Johnson. You can start when you're ready. Just come off of mute. Please adhere to the 2-minute rule.
Okay, great. To the honorable members of the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure, my name is Aditi Desai, and I'm here today to support Bill Intro 169, a local law to amend the administrative code of the City of New York in relation to the installation of electric vehicle charging equipment on lampposts. I represent VoltPost, a New York-based EV charging company that is the leader in lamppost charging solutions in the U.S. VoltPost was founded in 2021 to decarbonize mobility by democratizing electric vehicle charging access. We do this by deploying modular Level 2 EV chargers on existing lampposts. By retrofitting existing poles, VoltPost eliminates the need for extensive trenching, new utility service upgrades, or costly site reconstruction. This not only reduces construction and permitting complexity, but also enables chargers to be deployed and operational in a fraction of the time required for traditional charging stations. It also blends in with the fabric of the built environment and does not disrupt shared community spaces like sidewalks, unlike other level 2 charging solutions. In 2021, New York City DOT announced plans to build a public charging network with 40,000 level 2 chargers. This included installing 10,000 curbside chargers by 2030 and 200 lamppost chargers by 2023. In 2023, we completed a project with New York City DOT, where VoltPost piloted the first 2 lamppost chargers in New York City. The charger was used on a regular basis by NYC DOT staff to charge their fleet vehicles and had the highest utilization in the program cohort. VoltPost received feedback from over 200 New York City drivers and leaders, ranging from New Yorkers expressing that this is by far the best solution that they've seen for curbside charging, to stating that they want VoltPost on their street. We've also received funding from NYSERDA to deploy VoltPost lamppost chargers across New York State. We are actively working with Con Ed, cities across the state, and agency partners including EDC and MTA to execute lamppost charging projects to further demonstrate VoltPost's solution as a cost-effective and scalable measure to expand EV charging. We also have active projects in Michigan, Illinois, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and California. Some of the challenges that were raised by DOT earlier are valid. However, they can be worked through in New York City in a similar way that we've worked through with other states. This bill is a step in the right direction, and VoltPost has faced significant barriers to deploy in New York City due to the current regulatory environment. Without clear guidelines and streamlined authority for curbside charging, innovative solutions like ours, which are already successful in cities like London and Seattle, cannot scale here. I urge you to vote yes on this bill to enable increased access to this critical infrastructure in New York City. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Samuel Ludo. I'm the Director of Member Relations for the BTEA. Thank you, Chair Brooks Powers and the committee members for holding this important hearing. I'm delivering testimony on behalf of members executing the NYC, the DOT APS contract. The Building Trade Employers Association represents more than 1,200 union construction managers, general contractors, and specialty trade subcontractors across New York City. We're the largest organization of union contractors in the country. Our members develop critical civil infrastructure projects for New York City and state, as well as the federal government. Additionally, many of our members are small and MWBE firms that hire union workers under collective bargaining agreements. And so we think APS devices are necessary to preserve the health and safety of New Yorkers living with disabilities, and our members are eager to support a more accessible city. However, our members are troubled by the Independent Monitor's recent report finding that New York City is not in compliance with the MUTCD, and while they're being required to bear the cost of, and our members are required to bear the cost of compliance. The BTEA has heard from members who must perform work under a contract that we know requires revision, while also being forced to absorb the increasing costs associated with the contract. Additionally, poor communication and coordination from the DOT has made our contractors have to pay for more out-of-pocket costs because uninformed inspectors, delays in the building process, and an inaccurate pricing system. This has placed members in an untenable burden on our contractors, and our members really need relief. Otherwise, our members may no longer be able to bid on the work. We respectfully urge that the DOT move away from simply extending the current flawed contract. Rather than exercising unilateral renewal rights, the agency should issue a new solicitation that reflects today's compliance framework and real costs. Doing so would give installation contractors the clarity they need to decide whether to remain in the program and at what unit prices. Additionally, there needs to be timely inspections and permit approval through dedicated resident engineers and mechanisms for providing fair compensation for work outside the scope of the APS program. And so this will allow the deficiencies in the current contract to be remedied and ensure their city is fully accessible to all New Yorkers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Chair Brooks Powers. My name is Peter Rashino, and I serve as the Executive Secretary of the New York Electrical Contractors Association, which represents the union electrical contractors signatory to Local 3 currently performing work under the Department of Transportation's APS program. Our contractors support the mission of this program and recognize the importance of ensuring accessibility for all New Yorkers. Unfortunately, the city's execution of this contract has been deeply flawed, and unless changes are made, local contractors will continue to face devastating financial losses that threaten their ability to complete the work. The current contract, issued hastily in 2023 to comply with a federal court order, an important fact which the DOT does not mention, was based on inaccurate estimates and an ill-defined scope of work. Contractors were asked to design APS intersections without clear standards or consistent guidance, forcing them to make assumptions that have proven costly and unworkable. Compounding this, New York City DOT has failed to provide timely inspections and oversight as required by the contract. Instead of assigning resident engineers, DOT relies on a handful of roving inspectors who often review work long after it has been performed. This has created constant disputes over measurement, payment, responsibility for maintenance, costs that contractors must absorb. In addition, contractors are routinely forced to perform extensive non-APS work and redesign projects at last minute to accommodate the unrelated work at intersections. The contractors are being required to perform this extra work outside the scope of the contract without fair compensation under the unit price contract. This lack of coordination within DOT itself has led to delays in permits, inspections, and payments, while contractors are even ticketed for unavoidable conditions created by the APS installations. Finally, this contract's pricing terms are fundamentally unfair. The city has adopted a heads I win, tails you lose system, where contractors must absorb the losses from grossly inaccurate quantity estimates, but are prevented from recovering costs even when work far exceeds the original projections. The bottom line is this: our contractors have been asked to deliver on critically accessible program under the terms that are equitable and unsustainable. Without relief, the program itself is jeopardized. We ask the council to press the DOT to not to renew the contract and to put it out for a fair rebid.
Thank you.
I'm John Corey, local community Rockaway activist, or as others might say, pain in the butt. I'm here to give my support to Intro 1147. This issue is, without a doubt, a common denominator when it comes to the blight in every New York City neighborhood. Council members should not have to supply city agencies with portions of their budgets to get their constituents in the immediate communities what they already deserve as taxpayers. Proper maintenance of our community should be automatic, timely, hopefully mandatory after 1147 is passed. My personal experience with this type of urban blight of overgrown and dirty medians and unkept tree pits is a direct reflection of our immediate city government and city agencies, and New Yorkers as a whole. Overgrown medians and sidewalks of city and state properties and poorly maintained tree pits are a glaring example of the broken windows theory. Young students, folks walking to schools or work should not have their immediate environment poorly maintained. It gives them a subliminal message of nobody cares, so why should they? No New Yorker should be embarrassed to have a visitor to their neighborhood. Please pass these bills. I support all the bills as well.
Thank you.
Hello, Chair. My name is Christopher Leon Johnson. I'm showing support for Intro 169. I believe that the City Council need to start condemning the City Council member Joanne Areola, because she's leading the charge in preventing stuff like this from going through. She's the council member that is trying to find a way to say that she don't want EVs nowhere in the city. I believe that we need more EV stations in the city, even stuff like this, because of the fact that there's a lot of electric vehicle cars in the city, and God forbid that if you drive around the city and your battery about to die, how are we going to charge our cars? So we need, like I said, if we could put it on a lamppost, then that'd be great. There's a video, I think I was on Instagram, of a Hasidic Jewish guy that was charging his car, and he got shamed for it, and that shouldn't be right. If you got to charge your car, you should charge your car. Just like you have to charge your phone, you should charge your phone. I hope that this goes through. This bill needs more sponsors. And I'm going to show support for another bill that was introduced by Eric Botcher. I'm showing a little opposition to the bill for 1233, and the reason I'm showing opposition is because I saw that Julie Wan was here today. Really, I know she's trying to push in Intro 1138, but this type of bill, Intro 1233, will really do the same amount of problems, give the same amount of problems for like Intro 1138. And like as I told Julie Wan before, say, look, I get it. I understand we need daylight in the city. But just like Eric Botcher, like, yeah, we have to have separations for the bike lanes and vehicles, proper separation, not just put in like paint all the time. But if you don't really want to mend the numbers from 20 feet to 10 feet,
the bill's going to die. And like I say, I believe this bill right here, 1233, that this bill does not make sense. And there's a reason why that the federal government, they completely gave the finger to the 10th Avenue bike 10th Avenue streetway, because it didn't make no sense. 10th Avenue is a real popular area. Hudson Yards right there, another billionaire's row, and so that's all I gotta say. So I support two of those bills, and me add one more thing, and I do support your bill 1147, because the fact that Rockaway, both Rockaway, it gets really congested with debris and stuff like that, and it need to be cleaned up.
Thank
So
you.
thank you so much.
Thank you. Next, we're gonna go online, and the panel is dismissed. Thank you. We'll be hearing from Nina Guides, followed by Saif Alam.
Hi, good afternoon, and thank you to the chair and members of the committee for holding today's hearing. I'm Nina, I'm the policy manager of Transportation Alternatives, which offers the following testimony on today's bills. TA supports Intro 1233, protecting bike lanes from traffic, offers protection for riders, and doing so with trees, greenery, and other vegetation supports the tree canopy and can serve as green stormwater infrastructure. Greenways are a critical tool in this effort, and the city should accelerate the build out. In implementing this bill, the city must fully fund the Parks Department's maintenance of the vegetation, as well as the care and cleaning of medians as outlined in Intro 1147. We also support Intro 1104, which calls for the study of the feasibility of potential new ferry terminal locations. The city should identify options for expanding ferry service for New Yorkers and prioritize locations in places that would provide increased transportation options for communities with limited transit options. Intro 1293, which would establish ferry service at Canarsie Pier, where residents have been advocating for a ferry dock for years, should be advanced as well. And lastly, TA supports Intro 270, which requires DOT to offer special open streets activation opportunities during holidays and other days with significant pedestrian traffic. Open streets have helped local businesses reduce crash rates and injuries and provide a new way for neighbors to connect. The program should be expanded to include more celebration days, such as Pride, so that open street community partners can more easily navigate the process to activate their streets. We'll submit additional comments and written testimony. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, Saif Alam.
Yes, hi. Good afternoon, members of the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. Thank you for allowing me to testify today. My name is Saif Alam, and I'm the president of the Jamaica Hill Community Association. Uproots of trees that cause damage to sidewalks is a top issue in our neighborhood. I spoke to several residents in my neighborhood, and they have reported the 311 complaints to 311. Their complaints did not receive a timely response by the New York City Parks. Although the New York City Parks did inspections in front of their property, the New York City Parks did not prioritize the matter for the need of repair because it is below priority number 90. So the requests that were submitted again, but residents have to wait till the next cycle. Based on the delay of requests, I urge the New York City Council to do the following things. Allocate more investment on tree and sidewalk programs to expedite the process to repair sidewalks. Allocate more investment to hire more staff for New York City Parks so they will have increased capacity to repair damage of sidewalks caused by trees. Ensure that the investment allows for a walkthrough requested by a civic association president to check for damages for a sidewalk. Our homeowners deserve to repair their sidewalks caused by New York City-owned trees without relying on expensive alternatives to repair the sidewalk on their homes. More investment towards the tree and sidewalk program in New York City parks will ease financial burden of homeowners residing in Jamaica Hills, Queens. So thank you for allowing me to testify today, and I'll follow up more with the members of the committee in the future meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. we have inadvertently missed anyone that has registered to testify today and has yet to have been called, please use the Zoom hand function if you are testifying remotely, and you will be called in that order. If you are testifying in person, please come to the dais. With that, this hearing is now adjourned. Thank you to all who has come out to testify, whether virtually or in person or in writing.